Sony's PS Vita would always find it hard going up against the mighty Nintendo handhelds, but with the PSP, Sony proved that they could make a great system with some exceptional games. A portable that tried its hardest to give games console-level performance on the go. With the PS Vita, this trend continued, but its life was to be short-lived. What's up everyone, this is Max Power and welcome to another episode of Maxed Out. Today, I talk about the Vita and give it a review in 2018. Is this handheld still worth having? Or is it time Sony stuck to home consoles instead and exit the handheld and mobile markets? Let's get to the video. The PS Vita launched in Japan at the end of 2011 and in other parts of the world in 2012. At the time, the hype and word of mouth surrounding the device was ample, and there was no reason for anyone to think that this handheld may actually struggle in the marketplace. Certainly not to the extent where the system sold at basically Wii U sales numbers, but even with what could be seen as a commercial failure, that does not mean the system is not worthy of purchase and is very capable of providing many hours of enjoyment. The original PS Vita was replaced by a slimmer version in 2013 in Japan and in other parts of the world in the first half of 2014. Apart from being slimmer, it was also lighter and included a lower cost LCD screen instead of the original's OLED screen. It is a comfortable system to hold, but it does have a slightly cheap feeling to it with it being so light. When comparing the two systems side by side, there is a noticeable difference between the different types of screens, with the OLED being brighter with richer colours and blacks being darker than on the LCD. There can also be a slight motion blur with the LCD screen, but all up, when the systems aren't running side by side, the slimmer version is great to look at and is impressive in its own right. Another benefit of the slimmer PS Vita is that it comes with 1GB of internal memory, whereas the original came with none. When holding the PS Vita, it feels comfortable, and although I find it has a cheaper feel to it, it also keeps the weight to a minimum, which is beneficial for longer gaming sessions. The analog sticks feel a little loose, but I prefer them to the PSPs, and having the dual analog control really brings the system more in line with the home console and is needed when playing many games. There is a touchpad on the back which is not used very much with games, and seems like Sony were content to throw everything into this system and see what was needed and what wasn't. The system itself can also be tilted, bringing motion controls to the handheld, but again, it is not an integral part of the system, and I find myself neglecting the feature in all games when there is an option to use it or not. The user interface and navigating around the menu is quick and easy, with everything laid out as tiles, so many everyday tasks, including launching games, are no more than a couple of clicks away. Putting the device to sleep after playing a game will put it into a standby mode, and when wanting to resume your game at a later time, the system wakes up quickly and getting back into the game is almost instantaneous with no loading to take place. Now let's talk about the games that the system has, as that's why we buy these systems, and the Vita launched with a good amount of titles back in 2011, and 2012 was a very solid year for the console too. The Vita is home to some of Sony's largest exclusive game franchises such as Uncharted, Wipeout, God of War, Little Big Planet, Ratchet and Clank, and Killzone. Each of these games pushes the system far and shows gamers just what is capable on a handheld system. These games in 2018 are still quite impressive, especially considering the hardware is over 6 years old and many of these games were launched in the first couple of years of the system's life. Sony have always made their handhelds be as close to a portable console as possible in terms of raw power, and this applies to the Vita as well, with it pumping out great graphics and sound on many games which would not look out of place on a home console at the time. With better looking and sounding games, these require more memory to store, and any PS Vita owner would be aware of the proprietary memory cards that Sony chose to implement alongside the console. For the type of gamer such as myself that prefers to have their game library digitally, this increases the cost of the system considerably, as the memory cards are very expensive. To put it in perspective, a 32GB card at launch was almost half the cost of the system at $120 US. This expense can be greatly minimized for those who prefer to have hard copies of their games, but even the lower capacity cards are expensive when compared to their SD card counterparts. In 2018, the Vita isn't as popular and doesn't sell anywhere near it first did at launch. Due to that, and Sony not supporting the system anymore in any meaningful way, any gamer choosing to buy the system this late in its life should not go in expecting many AAA games in the future. It is almost a certainty that the biggest franchises that Sony has, such as Uncharted and God of War, will no longer make their way to the system, with the bulk of the Vita games coming these days are either smaller indie titles or are niche Japanese titles. For me, the system is still a great buy for anybody who enjoys collecting gaming consoles and systems, or is looking for something different compared to their home gaming console or PC. Games can be had cheaper these days as well, as many stores want to get rid of any remaining Vita stock, and Sony themselves have great savings digitally on their PlayStation Network store. Now, if somebody is deciding between a Nintendo Switch or a Vita, then there are several points to consider. The Vita is much more portable than a Switch, which can be quite bulky taking it on the go. The Vita has the Sony exclusives, with little to no new ones coming in the future though, whereas the Switch has the Nintendo exclusives. Plus, it will be home to many more current titles now and in the years to come, plus it functions both as a home console and portable gaming system. The PS Vita does offer remote play with the PS4, which allows PS4 games to be played via the Vita over a home network. This adds value for those who already own a PS4 console. With these points in mind, the Vita is sure to give you many hours of enjoyment and is a recommended buy for those wanting to play Sony exclusives on the go. It has nowhere near the game library or support of the Nintendo 3DS systems or smartphones, but it is still a good choice for gamers looking for a portable gaming system in 2018. Graphically impressive, great controls, and some top quality software that can be had quite cheap, the Vita is a solid system. Just beware that its best days are well and truly behind it. Have you bought a PS Vita recently? Have you moved on from the system to the Nintendo Switch? Let me know in the comments what you think of the PS Vita, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, then please like it and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. This is Max Power, and I'll see you on the next episode.